I invite Aarti Omar, IIT Chennai, to start with the session. Uh,
Okay. Am I audible?
yes, perfect.
A very good morning to all the participants and welcome back to the second day session of Arts and Guards model. So today basically what we are going to do, we are going to deal with the practical session. So today I won't be showing you up any kind of slides. We will be doing right away exercise in the R software. And I believe that yesterday's practice session you have enjoyed, and you have also enjoyed doing the practice by your own self. I have shared the code as well as the data as requested. And after today's session, I will be sharing you further code and the data if required. Okay, because I think data is the same which I would be practicing today. So let me share. What happened? Where's gone? Just a second, I'm getting some trouble while sharing the R file. Just hold for a while. Let me check where's the problem. Okay. Um, is it visible to all of you?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, it
Yes,
is
ma'am, it is
visible.
visible.
Okay. So shall we begin with the R practicing? Hello, shall we begin with?
Sure, ma'am. Please proceed.
Yeah. So yesterday, as we have discussed, so there are some libraries which are listed above, but our the interest library for us is the RU Guards model for the univariate Guards model. But there are some standard library like for say quant mode, which will help you to access the data directly from the websites, web data. Basically, you can extract the web data, and there are some other packages which are supporting packages, let's say for drawing the graph or doing some kind of analysis, some kind of it's like cosmetic changes, whatever we do over the R. For that purpose we have XGS, we have DP Elvire library, and then we have performance analytics. You can also run those libraries, so it will project your graphs in a much better way.
Ma'am,
In more detail.
ma'am, one question, please. Sorry, I just disturbed you. So there
Yes,
are sometimes in this stock return we take ln return also or log return. Is there any difference of that?
I'm not getting. Can you please come again? Your voice
So,
was little shattering. Yeah,
okay.
please come again.
My point is that sometimes we are taking ln return also and log returns also. Is there
Hmm.
any difference of that?
No, see, it's a natural log. Either you take or log at the base of 10. So there is no, either it is E base natural log
Hmm.
or it is
Uh,
base 10. So it is again depends upon you
any
which
difference?
one you.
Okay,
Okay,
fair enough. Fair enough.
okay, okay. So let us begin with. So again, I would be using the Apple stock. And for the after practicing this session, I would suggest you all to download the NSC data and do practice by own self. Give your file to me through Biju, or I can share your email ID so I can assess whether you have done, practice. You have understood the concept or not, so I can give the feedback over there also. Okay, so that is the plan of the day. All right. So let's begin with. So first we would be running these libraries. if the packages are installed, so these library would be run automatically. Otherwise, you have to install the package corresponding to each of the library. All right. So my libraries are running, you can say. So I'm just downloading the packages. It will take some time. All right. Okay, fine. Okay, now this get symbols. So basically, I'm using the Apple ticker. So Apple ticker is denoted by AAPL. So it will be automatically fetching the data from the web, and I'm taking the data from 2008 January 1st January 2008 till 31st December 2020. So I will run this command. It will take some time. So you can see now I got my data. So if I wanted to see my data, what I will be doing, I will be just clicking it here, and you can see my data is here. So this data is having the 4-5 columns. It says open, high, low, close, volume, and adjusted prices. This is the price data. But we are more interested to doing the analysis with the closing price. Most of the time we do like that. There is no hard and fast rule. There are some cases where we use open, high, and low also. Again, depends of your interest. But right now I'm taking the close data in my practice session. So I wanted to plot the graph for the close data. So when I'm plotting the graph, you can see this is the chart here. Okay, this is the chart. Is it visible to all of you?
Yes, ma'am, it's visible.
Okay.
Ma'am, this data is extracted from which website? Prasant sir is asking.
Actually, it's a web. So it can be extracted from anywhere, wherever it is available. So
Available.
basically, you
Okay.
can say
R itself extract from where it is available.
it is Yahoo. So you can see
Right.
it is taking it from the
Yahoo
Yahoo.finance.
Finance.
Okay.
Yahoo Finance.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So right now, because most of the time the data is available on the Yahoo.finance, so it is available there. So okay, fine. So what I will be doing, I will be saying particularly closing price in a new variable which is called Apple close. Okay, so this is my new variable, and if I wanted to see the headers of my this new variable, so I can write head and this new variable. So I can see the head. What happened? Just a second. There's a spelling mistake. Okay, so you can see it will just show you the heads here. Okay, so this is the procedure. Now, in my yesterday's file, you might be wondering there was one command. Hello. Hello. Hello.
Yes, ma'am, we can hear you.
Yeah, there is some voice coming, so I thought somebody is asking questions.
I'll check it, ma'am. I will mute them. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, please. I thought they are asking questions to me, so I stopped. Okay, so in yesterday's command file, you might be wondering there was one command which is called writing data from R to Excel. So here, what I have given you, I just given you the command so that you can further manipulate as per your directory. So here I'm saving my files to the D directory, and this is my folder. And then you can write this write dot table. So there all the Apple data which is coming from the Yahoo Finance, or let's say from the web, that you can download in your particular folder. So let's say if I run this particular command, so I'm running this command, okay, and then my data will be downloaded in my directory. Now uh, this is a little introduction about how to write the data and all. Now coming to the main part, so I want to calculate the return of the apple. So there is a formula. As we know the formula, but in the R language, the command is calculate returns. So once you click on the calculate returns, you will get the calculated return. Now let me show you the head of the return, and then why I have used the -1, I'll show you the reason. So you can see whenever we are calculating the return, so our first observation is null, because our data, let's say starting from the 1st January, or let's say 2nd of January 2008. So above that we don't have any observation. So whenever we are calculating the log of the return or ln of the return, or let's say the first difference of the data, at that time we don't have any other observation. So first observation is always null for us in the return file, right? So because this is a null, this is a blank cell, so we wanted to remove this cell, otherwise it will create a problem for the further calculation, especially in the R. So what I would be doing, I would be removing this first cell which says there is no observation. So what I would be doing, return is equals to return -1. This -1 denotes the first cell. So once I would be running this particular command, and then again I would be seeing the head. So you can see my first observation of the 2nd January 2008 has gone. Okay, so now my observations of the return file will start from the 3rd of January 2008. Now coming to the histogram plot. So see, you can see there is a histogram plot, and by seeing the histogram, my first observation as a researcher, or as a if I'm as an analyst, that I can say that this is not the normally distributed curve, this is not the normally fitted data series. Okay, so this is my first observation after seeing the histogram. Then I can further plot the density curves here. So this will give me more better understanding about how the data is behaving. So after plotting the data density curve, what I found, so there are, you can see there are blue lines, which is the actual data, blue bars, which is the actual data. Then we have a red curve, then we have a green curve. So red curve belongs to the normal distribution, okay? Because I have already given the command here. You can see add dot normal, which I have asked to be plotted in the red color, whereas the add dot density, which I've asked for blue and green. So this green curve shows the fitted curve. Okay, this is the fitted curve. What is the best fit to my data available right now? So after seeing that particular distribution, what I understand is my data is leptokurtic because it has the higher peak. Can you please mute the background? I keep on getting the voices. I request all the participants, please mute your mics. It will be easy for me. Okay. All right. So this green curve basically denote that my fitted data is leptokurtic. It is having the high peak and it has the flatter tails. Okay. And the red curve shows the normal curve. So by seeing the curve itself, I can say my data is not normally distributed and not behaving the normally. Now let me see the return series. Okay, so once I plot this command, when I run this command, so I will get the return series, and you can see this is my return series. All right, so this return series says my first observation, without knowing anything about the data, my first observation says that it has volatility clustering at some places, because there at some places the observations are getting clustered and volatility is very high, going up and down. There are high peaks, high observations going beyond the. So these kind of behavior mostly occurring near 2008 2009 period, and at the end we can see somewhere January 2020, somewhere in January to December. Okay, in between also we have a lot of fluctuations, but on an average my return series is lying around the mean. Okay, So this is my characteristic of the return series. Now coming to now I wanted to check my serial correlation and volatility clustering. I'm just repeating the yesterday's talk so that you will be brushing up what we have discussed yesterday. Then we'll move forward. So if I wanted to plot the serial correlation of Apple return, I will run the ACF. So this is the function called autocorrelation function. So when you are running this command, you will get the autocorrelation of return series. Now here, what I discussed yesterday, that if your observation or if your bars are crossing the blue band line, which are 95% confidence interval, and they are occurring, they are crossing it number of times, so you can say there is a autocorrelation. But when there is very random behavior in the bars, so you can say there is no serial correlation or autocorrelation. So what I concluded from this kind of graph, can you please mute the background? I request you again and again, can you please mute the background? All the participants, please mute the background. It's really difficult for me to continue further otherwise. Okay, so what I found that there is no serial correlation and autocorrelation in this data series. Now I wanted to check the volatility clustering statistically. I wanted to see as well as what I've observed by visualizing the graph. So what I would be doing, I would be taking the absolute return and plotting the ACF curve. So while plotting the ACF curve, what I found, there is a my hunch was correct. After visualizing the graph, I had the hunch of volatility clustering, and that my hunch is correct. As you can see, the most of the bars are crossing the blue band line, which is the confidence interval. So it says that the data series is having the volatility clustering. Now, this was the talk we discussed yesterday, and then I run the GACH model also, that I will be doing in due course. Now, today, if I wanted to see what is the standard deviation of my return series, so there is a function of standard deviation. So when I run this standard deviation command, I will get the standard deviation, and this is my standard deviation. And how much it is? It is 0.020. It is for the entire series my standard deviation. Now if I wanted to have the annualized standard deviation or volatility of my series, so basically we assume that in 1 year we usually have 250 to 252 trading days. It may vary. Okay, so we will take the square root of 252 multiplied by the standard deviation. That will give us the annualized volatility. Okay, sometimes people may get confused how to calculate the annualized volatility. So this is the way of calculating the annualized volatility, right? Now if I wanted to calculate the annualized volatility, particularly at the end of 2008, let's say, so I have a 2008 data, how to calculate the annualized volatility of the year of 2008. So this is the command for that. Here I would be taking the return of 2008 only, standard deviation, and then multiplying by the square root of 252. So this will give me only 2008 annual volatility, and this is 58%. You can see at that time in the graph also it was showing that 2000 year 2008 2009 we have a highly volatile series. So you can say you can see here that our volatility value or the annualized volatility is nearly 58%, right? All right. So if you wanted to plot the rolling chart of annualized volatility, then
Madam,
yes,
you said that adjusting factor that converts the daily standard deviation into annual standard deviation.
yes,
They're multiplying by square root of 252.
yes.
Ma'am, how this basically comes from this thing? This coefficient comes from the square root of 252, because if we are supposed to convert them into quarterly or any other monthly or say any other issue, how we will be converting them?
See,
That's
there are
why I'm
different procedure. There are different procedure, but the point is, if you are if you first you want to analyze the volatility on the daily basis, then you have to multiply it by square root of 252, because we assume in a year number of trading days are either 250 or 252 at max. So this is 252, right? So that is how on yearly basis we calculate. If you wanted to calculate on the monthly basis, so nearly we say we have a 22 trading days in a month. So
Therefore, we
likewise
need to
quarterly
multiply
also
by
you
square
you
root of
can
22.
multiply by, yes, square root of 22. I'm really sorry, organizers, please mute the background. There are a lot of noise coming and it's really difficult for me to continue. Okay. Please mute your rest of the participants. Please mute your background. I hope you are hearing me. Okay, so hello. There's a lot of noise in the background, and I don't know people are talking or what they're doing. I really don't know.
But ma'am, it seems only
Okay.
you are
Lot of
unmuted.
voices coming in the background, and after saying number of times, nobody's speaking. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Okay.
So, Mr. Biju, can we check up that why the disturbance is coming?
Yeah, we have observed that all participants are muted, but we couldn't find that the problem is not at diagnosis, where the voice are coming. So all the participants are muted right now. Right?
Okay.
Sir, I
So,
guess someone is.
Snehit, can you post the recording?
Sir, I guess Kulbir Singh is.
Rolling volatility curve on monthly or the daily basis. So there is a volatility curve which I'm plotting it here from 2008 to 2019. So there is a plot you can see. Just wait, it will be plotted. So this is my monthly plot of rolling volatility. Okay, so here this volatility curve will give me again a hunch that near 2008 2009 my volatility was at peak, right? You can see it here, it is crossing even the one one band. And here in 2009 19, okay, so I plotted till 2019. Just wait, let me just redefine it, make it 2020. Yeah, let me plot it again, so because we have the data till 2020, or I can make the plot. Now you can see it here. I think it is visually clear that we can see near 2008 2009 we have very high jump in the volatility, whereas 2020 January till December you again got a peak. So as you can see, everything is mapping together, right? Whatever series we had, the observations, the way they are behaving, then we are plotting the volatility. We can also find there is a evidence, there is a clustering. The high volatility is followed by the next high volatility, and the low level volatility is followed by low level of volatility. So this is the monthly plot. We can also have the daily plot. This will be more a smooth curve. Just a second, the command is running. Okay, so this is my curve for the daily volatility. Okay, now you can see it here that our volatility is very high and it is sharply dropping from high level to low level from 2000 to 2009, whereas when we see 2020 year January to December, our volatility is again rising up. So this is again up and down is going on, but high level of volatility is occurring somewhere 2009 and then to 2020. So of course we do have the reason for that, and in between there are up and downs, so there are reasons definitely, but two reasons which I can quote here: for 2008-9 we have the global financial crisis which hit across the all over, across the markets very hard, and in 2020 2019 we have the novel coronavirus cases, so that also hampered the stock market a lot. So now let us move for the standard Gauge model with the interpretation that I've discussed yesterday, but I'm repeating it again. For the, as I said, for univariate gauge model, you have the library which is called UGauge, and then you will make the specifications for the gauge model. So gauge model basically have three set of equations. The first set of equations is about the mean model, which is the mean equation. Second equation is called as variance equation, and in the model we write variance model. And third one is the distribution. Okay, what distribution we are using. So in a UGauge model, how do we specify? So there is called function UGauge spec. So this is the way we write in the, function in the R, we write variance model. Okay, one more thing, there is no difference if you write the mean dot model first and then variance dot model second. The order does not matter here. You can write mean dot model first and then you can continue with the variance dot model. This is not at all a problem. But we write it like, I wrote it like that. Variance dot model is equals to list model. S gauge denote the standard gauge. Standard gauge, I'm using a standard gauge model. And then we have a gauge order which is 1, 1. We are using only one lag of the volatility and one lag for the error term. Okay, if you remember the equation last time we discussed, which was mean equation was RT is equals to A naught plus under root of HT epsilon T, right? Whereas the variance equation was HT is equals to alpha naught plus beta 1 HT square T H square T minus 1 plus alpha 1 epsilon square T minus 1. Epsilon square T minus 1 is known as the arch effect, whereas H square T minus 1 is square T minus 1 is known as the gauge effect. So this is called the gauge order 1, 1. Okay, so I'm taking one lag arch effect, one lag gauge effect. Then we have the mean model. So mean model is the constant mean model. I'm using it here. Distribution model is my norm. Norm represents the normal distribution. All right. So at the beginning, we always start with the basics. So we assume the data is normally distributed. So I'm running the normal distribution model in the gauge 1, 1. Now there is another, after running this equation, which I will be running it here. Okay, where's the problem? Just a second. Just a second. Okay, fine. Okay, so when I will run this equation, so this equation has been run. Okay, you can see this equation is run. Now we have to fit the gauge model. For fitting the gauge model, we have the UGauge fit specification. Under this, we used to give two terms. One is the data, which data you wanted to fit, and then what is my first model results. So which is specs is equals to n. So I'm fitting the model. You can see I fitted the model. Now I wanted to see my output. This is my output. Now I want a very close attention of all of you, so that you can give you can understand what is this gauge model and how to read out the result, because I think that is the most important. When we read the papers or when we do the analysis, we should first understand what the results are saying to me, or how do we how do we go about it, how we can improve further if required. So as you can see, this is the conditional variance dynamics of the gauge model. So my gauge model is S standard gauge 1, 1. Mean model is ARIMA terms we have 0, 0, 0, and distribution is norm, that is normally distributed. Now coming to the optimal parameters. So these parameters which are listed here are same as what we listed in the equation, only the notation is different. For example, mu denote to the A naught of the mean equation, omega denote to the alpha naught of the variance equation, alpha 1 denote the coefficient of error, and beta 1 denote the coefficient of volatility, lag value of the volatility, which is ht minus 1. All right. So you can see all the coefficients are significant, because we have the probability value which is less than 5%. That means we are rejecting the null hypothesis which says the coefficients are not significant, and we are accepting the alternative hypothesis. So here you can see our beta 1 coefficient, which is the coefficient of the lag value of the volatility, is 0.84%. 84%, that means our present volatility depends upon the past value of the volatility, which is dominating 84%. 84%, they are my current volatility is being explained by the past volatility, whereas the 12% remained is being explained by the error term, past value of the error term. I hope this is understood to you, all of you. Now the next important thing what we need to see is the information criteria. So there are a number of information criteria like Kaike, bias, and Bata. So here what we'll be doing, we have to, when we are running the number of models, sometimes you come across research paper which talk about that they have run number of GARCH model, but they wanted to select which one is the good fit. So they also look into the information criteria, and whichever information criteria, whichever model is having the lowest information criteria value, that model is much appreciated as comparison to the other models. Okay, so this is the other important thing. Now coming to the third thing, which is the weighted L-Jung box test on the standardized residuals. So that talks about that my null hypothesis says that whether my residuals are serially correlated or not. So this is basically for the diagnosis of the residuals. Okay, so that also very important when we run any of the model. We also wanted to see the behavior of the residuals. So that also define whether my model is a good fit or not. So here you can see my null hypothesis is being accepted, which says no serial correlation among the residual standardized residuals. Okay, so that means my my residuals does not have the serial correlation. Just for a while, because I have a small baby and my parents are handling, so they were asking me something. I'm really sorry for it, for the interruption in between.
Ma'am, may I ask you something here? Sorry for the
Yeah,
interruption.
yeah, please.
So, if you can just move slightly up on those mu and those results,
Yes,
those
yes,
coefficients which we estimated. So, ma'am,
yes.
here after seeing the results of alpha and this one, next one,
Beta one.
yeah, beta one. So, can
Yeah.
I say that this 84% is the conditional volatility that we are assessing here, and 12% is idiosyncratic volatility?
Correct. Exactly. You find it very correct.
Yeah. And ma'am, is
Okay.
it possible to extract this idiosyncratic volatility if at all I want to estimate and I want to use it
Yes,
for?
yes, yes. I will show you how to estimate. Let me read out the results and
Okay,
then I
ma'am.
will
Okay.
show you. Okay, I'll
Sure.
show you.
Thank you.
This is the
Thank you.
plan of the day, how to extract
Thank
the
you.
coefficients and all. Okay.
Thank you,
So
ma'am. Thank you.
yeah. So okay. So fine. My residuals does not have any serial correlation. Now coming to the next part, which is very much important. Rest of the things are okay. Fine. Now coming to the Pearson goodness fit or fit test. So this is corresponding to the model. This will say whether my model. So my model was a standard GARCH 1-1 model with the normal distribution. This is my model. So this says whether my model is a good. This statistics are going to understand that whether my model is the good fit. So I discussed first, if you have a couple of models, you can comparison the information criteria. But let's say if I run only the normal distribution, then how do I understand if I don't have any benchmark with me? How do I understand that whether my model is a good fit or not, or to improving the model or not? So you need to see the goodness of fit test. So if you look at the P statistics, so my null is that this model is a good fit model. I always assume whatever I do is always correct. That is the universal understanding. Whatever we do is always correct. So basically, what is the null hypothesis? This model is correct. But when you look at the null hypothesis, what they say is, when you look at the p values, what do they say? They say that No, my p values are not even significant. They are, 0, 0, 0. So I mean they are significant. So we need to reject the null hypothesis. That means my model is not good fit. So there is a scope for the further improvement. Now, if you map everything in your mind, what I have discussed so far from the beginning till now, so if you look at the density plot where I was talking about that normal distribution is not the best fitted distribution for my data, and now my GARCH results are also telling me that when I'm running the normal distribution model with the GARCH 1.1, this is no, this is not the good fit model. I have the scope for the improvement. Can you correlate the things together? All of you.
Yes, ma'am.
Can you correlate? Yeah,
Yes,
can you
ma'am.
correlate the things? Now you visualize by your own that so far what we are discussing, everything is aligned, right? So that says that my normal distribution curve is not best fit curve for the data. And when I run the normal distribution in the GARCH 1.1 model, that also says that there is a scope for the model, and we can further improve our model. We can further improve our GARCH model, right? So this is for, this is how you read the results. So these kind of results will keep on appearing for every time when I'm running the different model. Now your task would be to analyze all those results and to understand with your intelligence that the which model is the best fit. And there your descriptive statistics, like whatever we have visualized, they also plays a very important role. So first of all, you always go for the descriptive statistics for any of the data when it comes handy to you. Are you getting my point? It's not always good to run any of the model. First, to look at the data, see the behavior and the pattern of the data, then try to understand the behavior. Then if you start running with the basic model, you will automatically understand what the data is talking and how you have to further improve your model, right? Okay, now the important thing which I did not discuss yesterday, how to plot all the things together. So this is one of the very good, command, and you will like it. Instead of plotting everything one by one, you can see everything in one plot. Can you see it here, all of you? Can you see this plot? Okay, so here we are having the serial correlation of the conditional standard deviation. Then we have the VAR limits for the series. Then we have the conditional standard deviation series. We have the autocorrelation of the observation, which we already plotted before. Then we have the autocorrelation of the squared observation. Yesterday somebody was asking that why do we go for the absolute observation, why not the squared observation? So here you can see we have absolute and squared observations both, and in both the cases the evidence says that there is a volatility clustering. Okay, and then you have the cross correlation graph for the observations, right? Now you can see there is a plot also, density plot of the residuals, but residual density plot is more or less the more or less it's not normal, but it's appear to be normal. Okay, and then we have a normal QQ plot. Now looking at this graph, this is very important, this particular graph, normal QQ plot, that says that my residuals are not normal. If your plotted line, which is in blue color, if it is not coinciding with the this what this what we say, this this black line, or you can say this straight line, then you can say that your residuals are not normally distributed. And in this graph also, upper one, empirical density curve of the standard residual, I said it appears to be normal, but this is not normal, and this is clear by the norm QQ plot. As much deviation you have the plotted line from the mean line or the black standard line, you can say that my residuals are not normally distributed. And if they are not normally distributed, that model is not a best fit model. Okay, okay, this is the news impact curve. Since we are using the symmetric GARCH model, a notice of these things. Now, how do you generate this plot? You just write plot fit n, which is equals to all. So this is the command that you can use. Now, how to extract the parameters, as somebody is asking me. So let's say I wanted to extract the coefficients. Okay.
Madam.
Yes. Yes.
Madam, in the plots you showed the cross correlation. Ma'am, what is that actually?
Cross correlation means that you wanted to see the observation of actually the point is here we are having a similar time series data, but when you have a two time series data, the cross correlation is more we can say more important at that time, because there you are seeing the correlation of one series with the other series. So that is called the cross correlation. Okay, you are cross means there are two series and then you wanted to see the correlation of one observation corresponding to the other observation. But in my case, in particularly this financial time series data, since I have only one time series data, so my serial correlation or the autocorrelation is more significant or more relevant to me. Why? Because I'm trying to see I'm trying to see the correlation of present observation with the past observation in one particular series. But if you have a two series, you wanted to see the cross correlation, then that there it is more significant. I hope I made it clear. It would be more important for you when you have multiple time series with you. Okay.
Ma'am, multiple time series, that means as we are using univariate guards, that means the variable should be the single one.
Single one.
That means the apples return.
Apple
Then
returns.
we will be classifying the whole time period into two series.
Two series means I'm not getting. What is the two series?
And then how will be this apple return will be classified into two time series data?
No, here, see, if you read the graph header, it says the cross correlation of squared versus actual observations. Meaning to say, you have the actual observations, that is the log of the return, right?
Yes.
And then the software generating one more time series, which is the squared of the observations. That means that they are squaring of the log of the returns observation. Are you getting my point?
Yes,
So there it will become two series.
Okay.
Okay, so then they are checking the cross correlation, but the concept is same. Cross correlation always come across when you have a two time series. So this particular software or this particular graph says I have two time series. How it comes? First you have the actual observation. This is my return series, and second is my return square series. Are you getting my point?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, did you understand the concept? Because this concept will be useful for the other kind of analysis when you have multiple time series data and then you are doing the analysis. You wanted to check the cross correlations. Are you getting my point?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, fine. And autocorrelation is basically I have one time series and I am checking the correlation of my, let's say, present observation with my past observation, or let's say present observation with the observation which is one time ahead. Okay, in the similar time series. Okay, so this is my autocorrelation. This is a single time series. Okay.
And
Now,
ma'am, one another issue that is, ma'am, in the optimal parameters.
where it is optimal parameter, where it is?
Ma'am, not in this graph, ma'am. The parameters you obtained, that mu,
okay,
omega, that those.
Yes, please carry on with your question.
Ma'am, there is robust standard errors. That means whether it is adjusted for the possible heteroscedasticity in the data.
No, so there won't be any kind of adjustment of the heteroscedasticity. Robust error. Let me just cross check it again where it is gone. See, robust standard error, if you see, so this is the this is nothing but this is again the similar kind of, this is optimal parameters and this is the robust standard errors. is basically the software is further refining it. See, in any kind of, this is RSE, okay, this is RSE, this is further refined, but more or less it is same. If you see the parameters values, this is same. A standard error is also little bit different, but it is more or less same. So there is none of the difference between the optimal parameters and the robust standard errors. If the model is it is a this if the model is correct, more or less time you will get both the things would be similar. Are you getting my point?
Yes, ma'am.
This is something adjusted which right now I cannot explain you because it requires a mathematical equation. So I cannot explain you verbally right now. But one thing you understand, optimal parameters and robust standard errors here for the given parameters what we extracted, both are similar. And if your model is explained properly, it will be similar. Okay, it is not it is not, what do you say, it is not conditional heteroscedasticity adjusted, or no, it is not there, it is not something like that. It is completely a different thing, but it requires a mathematical statement, which right now I don't have it right now here. But one thing you understand, if your model is explained correctly, both the parameters would be, both the results would be similar. You can see, even you can see the estimate part, coefficients values are same, right? Can you compare?
Yes, ma'am.
Coefficients values are same, only the difference is standard error. So basically there is a difference of the degrees of freedom. They are, the model is, have you heard about R square and adjusted R square?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
So if you understand that difference, I hope you can appreciate that difference here also. The way we calculate R square and adjusted R square, both the things will be convey the same thing, but most of the time adjusted R square we consider in our analysis. So here also things are similar. I hope you understand. You can map these two things with the R square and adjusted R square.
Yes, yes.
Understood? Okay,
Yes, ma'am.
fine. That's good thing. Okay. Okay, now how to extract the coefficients. So basically when you run, this is my model, complete model. When I click on this, you will get the results. So whenever you are extracting any of the coefficient, what you have to do is, you just write it like that. Let me just recheck because I just copy pasted it. Yeah. So when I would be writing fit n, basically I'm calling this solution @fit dollar coefficient. So this will give me the coefficients of the GARCH 11 model. You can see I've run this and you will get the similar extraction of the coefficient. Can you see that? Mu, omega, alpha 1, beta 1. Okay, can you see that? How to extract the coefficient? Okay, now if you wanted to, somebody was asking how to extract the residuals or the variance of the model. So again the same thing, the model which you have run @fit dollar, let's say you wanted to extract the variance, so I will write var and here you go. So if I wanted to see the head of UG var, here I go. Can you see that? This is my series. I hope it is visible to all of you. Can you see that?
Yes, ma'am, it is visible. You can see that.
Okay. Or otherwise, I can directly write UG var. So it will give me like that. I think it is more visible right now. Okay. So this is all my variance series corresponding to my return series. This is the variance. Okay, this is how, this you can use for further analysis for whatever purpose you wanted to do it. Now if I wanted to extract the residuals, then how do I extract? I will make the residuals and just remove the square because I'm doing a square of the residuals. So I just write residuals and I will run that, and then I will once I'm running this command, you can see these are the residual series. Can you see that? Okay. Now somebody might be interested how to transfer this data to Excel file. So if you remember my command for writing the data, writing the code from R to Excel, so this will work for you. Just save this to some kind of variable and then you can export into the Excel file. Are you getting my point? Now, with the purpose I wrote here is square. So I'll just write it as square. I just wanted to plot a graph. So that's the reason I wrote it as square. I want a squared residual and corresponding the graph with the volatility, and I wanted to see how they're behaving. So this is my graph. So you can see the black line is nothing but the residual plot, and green line is the volatility plot, okay, variance plot. Now you can see whenever my volatility is high, at that time my residuals are also larger. And whenever my volatility is low, corresponding residuals are also low. And you can see near this observations at the early of the series my residuals are high, and nearly at the end near to 2020 my again residuals are larger because volatility is high. So this is also one of the plot where you can see. And now coming to the summary statistics, how to obtain the summary statistics uh, of the model which I've run. So this is the way we do. So basically what we are interested in mean, variance, and then we are interested in skewness and kurtosis. So if I will run this command, okay, by the way, if you might have noticed there is a Z. Now you might get confused, what is this Z? So Z is nothing but the error term. Okay, so I wanted to see the error term. What is the mean of the error term? What is the variance of the error term? What is the standard deviation? And what is the skewness of the error term? So this error term is the same what we had in our equation F silent. If you remember the F silent T minus 1, this is the same. This error term is the same, but in the graph in the software it denoted by Z. So don't get confused. You can write it somewhere. So don't get confused. So I wanted to see the mean. I wanted to see the variance. I wanted to see the standard deviation. I want to see the skewness and then kurtosis. All right, so this is how you can extract the summary statistics of error term, as well as if you wanted to extract for the variance, you can write var here instead of z. So like that, you can extract the summary statistics. Now I'm going for the diagnostic plot for the error term. So this is the separate thing. Otherwise, you can have the similar thing which I've already when I plotted the graph, you might have seen I need not to plot it separately, but for your convenience, I'm plotting it separately so you can understand. Okay. So, there is called Jagg-Barras test, which is used for the normality test. So when I run the Jagg-Barras statistics, what happened? Just a minute, why it is not coming? Okay, let's make the QQ plot. Yeah, you can see the QQ plot here. So this is similar to the plot which I have already shown you before. This is just a separate way of drawing the graph. This says that my this residuals are not normally behaving. Then my serial correlation plot, but this says that there is no serial correlation. And in the result also, if you remember somewhere I told you the null hypothesis was accepted that there was no serial correlation in the result of the GARCH model. So only the thing is it requires practice, otherwise you can correlate all the things. So there is nothing new which I'm telling. I've already told you lot many things before. Now I wanted to plot, let's say I wanted to forecast 20 periods ahead for the Apple return series. So this is how I'm going to forecast, and I wanted to plot the fitted observation. So this is my fitted observation. This is how I plot. See, the plot is very straight line. Why? Because my mean is constant. In my Garch model, my mean is constant. I'm not using any kind of extra AR or MA term. That is the reason this graph is like that. So this is the way you forecast. And if I wanted to plot the volatility, so basically I'm more interested in forecasting the volatility, let's say for 20 periods ahead, or let's say for one year ahead. So this is how I can forecast the volatility, and this you can see over next 20 days how to interpret that result. Over next 20 days my volatility will be increasing. So this graph goes up. So my volatility will be increasing in next 20 days for the Apple stocks. Okay. And now if I wanted to predict the future returns, so what is the command for it? So these are the command. I can predict the future returns and I can plot. So this is my plot for the future returns. So this I plotted for next 10 days. I wanted to see in next 10 days what would be my return, how my returns are going to behave. So you can see in my next 10 days what could be the maximum and minimum return it can go up to. So here you can see the blue dot. So these blue dot shows, the lower series shows that my returns minimum up to minus somewhere minus 0.03 in next 10 days, and maximum it can go up to 0.03 with the actual returns. Okay, so this is plus minus 3 standard deviation curve kind of. So this is how you forecast. Now let us take one application of it. So how this is useful for the portfolio allocation, like this Garch model, whatever we have run. So how it is important for our portfolio? How do we do? What is the practical application of it? So you remember the fit N, that is nothing but the Garch model return. Okay, this is the fit N. I wanted to calculate the volatility of the Garch model. Whatever I've got the results, what is the sigma, and then I wanted to multiply it by square root of 252. This is my annualized variance. Okay, now I wanted to weight each of the variance with some weight I want to assign. Let's say I wanted to assign 0.5% weight to each of the annualized variance, and then what I would be doing, I just plot the things, and you can see, I'll tell you, I think plotting would be really helpful, and it will give us a lot of insights. Now first you understand this graph first. So upside series talks about the volatility curve and downside series talks about the weight. So let's say if I have a portfolio and I run the Garch model, I got the results, and then I wanted to assign some weights to the volatility, let's say 5% weight to the volatility. So what it says that whenever my volatility goes high, in this period my volatility goes high, I want to assign less weight to those assets where those particular time period, not asset. I'm really sorry to convey that, to those particularly time period. Whenever my volatility goes high, I want to assign less weight to that particular asset in that particular time period in a portfolio. And whenever my volatility goes down, let's say in this period here where my cursor is moving, at that time I wanted to assign more weight to that asset in my portfolio. Are you getting my point? Let's say in 2020 near January December my volatility is very high, I wanted to assign less weight to that particular asset during this period. That is how I assigned weight to the assets in a portfolio based upon my prediction and observations. Okay, so if I have such kind of phenomena, what I can do is I wanted to see my after assigning the weight, what is my volatility value. So my volatility value somewhere in December 2020 is 15%. Okay, so if I have, let's say, 10 lakh rupees in the market, and then how do I allocate to the risky asset and non-risky asset? So what this whole phenomena tells us, if I have 10 lakh rupees today and I wanted to invest in a portfolio of risky and non-risky asset, it tells me that if I take this particular time period, 2020, December 2020, it tells me that around 15, we multiplied by this weight to the our investment amount. So it says around how much it is? 1,58,000 out of 10 lakhs I should invest to the risky asset, and rest of the amount I should invest to the non-risky asset, which is 8 lakhs. Around 8 lakhs I should invest in non-risky asset based upon my prediction of the volatility of the assets in a given time period and the weight which I've assigned. Now somebody wanted to take more risk, so instead of 5% weight, I can make it 10%. Okay. And now let us see what is the calculation. I wanted to take more risk. Okay. So now you can see the weight, since I have allocated more, my value has increased from 15% to 31%. So if I multiply this particular value with the total investment amount, so it says that if I have a 10 lakh rupees, I should assign 3 lakh rupees, nearly 3 lakhs to the risky asset, and then nearly, just a second, then I should, remaining of the amount I should invest in non-risky asset, which is nearly 6 lakhs. So is it clear to all of you?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so this is a practical application of the GARCH model, that why do we need to understand the volatility so that we can assign the weight, and then based upon those weights we can assign, we can invest in the portfolio of the risky and non-risky asset. This is how the real portfolio manager does. This is the small example which I have taken, and this is how we do. And if you people like this thing, so we can have a detailed workshop somewhere in December. That is what I'm planning, but depends upon the feedback and other things. So we can plan somewhere in December where we can come up with more practical examples and more, basic. We can start with the basic and go up to the high level. And okay, so apart from that, let us go for the second type of model. Now, as I know, my normal distribution model, or with the standard GARCH model, is not the best fit, and my result says that there is a scope for the improvement, and my hunch says, after seeing the distribution of the density plot, that student T distribution, because it's a leptokurtic kind of, leptokurtosis distribution is leptokurtic, so my hunch says that I should probably go for the skewed student T distribution. So how the code goes, everything remains same. Only the thing is, we need to change, instead of norm, we will change it to SSTD. That is for skewed student T distribution. Okay, so this is how it goes. And once we will run this particular equation, so you can see everything will fall in place. Now I will run the fit model with the return data. I wanted to see the results. Now these are my results. Now, first of all, let us see for the goodness of fit. Instead of going to the parameters, let me first see the goodness of fit. Now here you can compare with the previous model where my p-values was less than 5%. And here you can see suddenly there is a jump in the p-values. When I'm using the student T distribution, my p-values has gone up, and they all are above 5%. They are almost 50, 51, 69 for the different groups. So that says that this model is good fit. Of course, this model is good fit. Now let us go back to the parameters. Let us see what parameters do we have. So we have mu, omega, alpha, beta. Now there are two more parameters has been added. One is the skewness parameter and the other is the shape parameter. Okay, mu is the same. It is the mean equation coefficient which is known as A naught. Omega is the coefficient alpha naught in the variance equation. Alpha 1 is the coefficient of error term, lag value of the error term in the variance equation. whereas the beta 1 is the coefficient of variance, lag variance in the variance equation. Now, skewness and shape parameter has also come in this model. Skewness talks about that whether my graph or data is left skewed or right skewed. If the value is 0, it says my data is centrally skewed. I mean, there is no left and right, there is no positive and negative. If it is minus, that means my data is negatively skewed. If it is positive, that means my data is positively skewed, or it is basically left hand side skewed. Okay, right hand side is skewed. And shape parameter, because it is 4.75, so definitely there is a, this is not the normally distributed, that is the reason the shape parameter is coming into the picture. Okay, so this define the kurtosis actually. You can see the p-value, all p-values are significant, all the coefficients are significant. Okay, so that's a good thing about the model. Now coming to the information criteria, if you remember the Kaike value and other information criteria values for the normal distribution, and if you compare with them, so you will find these are the lowest one as comparison to the previous model. So with all the given points, I found this model is much better as comparison to the model which I ran before. Now, the better understanding, visualizing whether the model is good fit or not, let us see the residual plot. So I'm going to plot all the things together. So here you have all the things together. All right. Now, the interesting thing to look at, you can see the graph number 8. Okay, you look at the graph number 8, which is the density plot. And this density plot says that the blue line is the normal density curve, whereas the orange line, this is your fitted curve. This is your fitted density curve, and which implies the Garch model, which the output which is fitting to the data is more appropriate, because this is fitting to the data. Okay, the way the data is uh, the shape of the data, the curve which Garch model is producing is much better as comparison to the normal curve. Okay, so that student T curve is fitting much better as comparison to the normal curve. Now look at the QQ plot. If you remember previously the QQ plot, we had the blue line, which is, it was very far away from the black line, which is the straight line. But in this graph, you can see our blue line observation are nearly falling near the black line. There are few observations. These are the outliers which are falling apart from the black line. Otherwise, you can see the fitted data or the fitted observations are lying above the black line. Okay, so this also says that this model has improved further and giving the better results as comparison to the normal distribution model. Again, you look at the news impact curve, because we are using the symmetric Garch model, so there is no impact of the news you can observe here, but in due course we will see there could be a change in the curve when we are using the GJ Garch model like that. Just a second, let me go back to the window. Okay, so again, these are same thing that you are going to extract the parameters for your convenient. I'm rerunning it again. You can see mu, omega, alpha, beta 1, and you have skewness and shape parameter. This is how you extract the variance. Then you have the residuals. Then you can plot it again. Okay, so this is just repetitive things which we have done earlier. So there is nothing new. Just repetitive things. So again, where the volatility is high, residuals are spiking up in both the end and the beginning of the time series. Summary statistics, yes, again you can plot the summary statistics. So I'm just running all the things together. Here you have a kurtosis 3.4, skewness, standard deviation, variance, and mean. Okay, so these are your summary statistics. All right.
Madam,
Now, yes,
ma'am, can you please go to that skewness and kurtosis part of the
this one,
parameters?
yeah, this one, or in the result, where you want.
Ma'am, in the result, skewness and kurtosis.
Okay.
Skewness and shape, the
Shape
optimal parameters.
parameter. Yeah, shape parameter. Yes. You can see again, I believe your question is near the optimal parameter and robust standard error. You
No,
will
no.
find, okay,
Ma'am,
estimates
actually,
are
I
same.
was ask- yes.
Estimates are same.
Ma'am,
So
here,
yeah.
here the coefficient of skewness and the shape.
Hmm.
Ma'am, is this Mona, what will be the implication of this coefficient
Okay.
actually?
Okay, I'll tell you. The skewness says 1.005, right? So skewness is not zero. That means my data, and this is positively, my coefficient is positive, right? So it says that my data is positively skewed. So my tail is towards the left hand, towards the right hand side, positively skewed. Okay. So this says that my data tails is towards the right hand side. My return of in the return series. So let me just make you understand like that. My return series. If I plot the return series, I will find that most of the positive returns are there, and which are towards positive side. In the entire data series, I have most of the larger positive return. Means there are some days which I've got very high returns. Okay, so that is the reason those values are very high, but those observations are very less. So what will happen? That will come to the tail part. That will define the tail of the distribution. Since my skewness says it's a positive, so it is a positively skewed. So my tail will come towards the right hand side. So it says I have in Apple stocks, there are days when Apple stock has given me very, very high returns. Okay, not all the time, but there were days when stocks have given extremely outstanding results or returns. Are you getting my point?
Yes, ma'am.
Had it been the negative, since you have raised the question, had it been the negatively skewed, I would have explained it in this manner, that if it is a negatively skewed, I would have tell that my observation my data is negatively skewed, so my tail is towards the left hand side, and I would have said that there are some days when the Apple stocks have given negative returns, though there are some days, that means those observations are very less in number, but when it is given negative number, like people have started crying. Okay, so it has brought the tears in the eyes of stockholders. That means the returns were very, very negative, or the stock prices have fallen very sharply. So these are towards the left hand side. Are you getting my point? I hope
Yes,
I have
yes,
made
yes,
you
ma'am.
understand.
Ma'am, positive and negative skewness, then we can just see the sign in front of the coefficient.
Yes,
Ma'am,
yes, yes,
ma'am,
yes.
what about that estimate? Is it telling something like 1.005? Is there
No,
any indication?
no. We can't particularly go and define what this coefficient says. Only we can say that by seeing the positive and negative, if the number is large, skewness, if let's say it is 1.005. So right now, what I can interpret that this some days in data series I got very high returns. Observations are less, but I have got very high returns. But as the number grows, let's say it is 2.005 or 3.005, so it says my tails are becoming more flatter.
Okay.
Okay, it is getting more deeper in shape. Are you getting my point?
Ma'am, that means if skewness is tending towards zero, that means the tails are quite narrower.
Narrower, that will become the normal
No,
distribution.
close to the normal distribution.
Close to the normal. Yes, you are right. Close to the normal distribution. Okay, because normally this normal distribution, neither it is positively tailed or negatively skewed. Okay, it is symmetric across the mean, right?
Yes.
Okay, so shall we move further?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So, okay, what I was discussing about. So yeah, I hope you understood about the GART skewed student T GART. Now there is one more model, again the same application that you can do it again. I'm not going through again and again the portfolio allocation. I think concept I've already given you. What is the purpose? Now going to the GART, this is third type of model, which is called student T GART, student T distribution. Here you can use, instead of skewed, I'm removing the skewed part. I will only get student T distribution, and I will rerun the plots, everything again. Okay, and you can see the plot here. So first of all, let us see the results. So I will run the coefficient. I will extract the coefficient here. Let me see what are the coefficient. Only skew in this, what will happen? Only the skewness part will not come. Only shape parameter will be there. Only skewness part you won't be understanding it. So I think skewed T distribution is much better as comparison to the only student T distribution, because it will give you a hunch of skewness also. More or less results would be same, because I've already run, so I know that results will be same. Now you can see here the QQ plot. It is more or less normal. Okay, it looks like to be normal. Okay, residuals are normally behaving right now in this plot also. Okay, and then I'm not going in detail because everything would be similarly, how you are going to read would be similar. I hope you understood. Only skewness parameter will not be there. And let me take you through the GJR GARCH model, because I wanted to show you the impact of noise, impact of news curve. Okay, so now, so far what we were doing, we were using S-GARCH model, and we will keep on changing the distribution model. But now this is the fourth model, which is called asymmetric GARCH model, and there is a one variant of asymmetric GARCH model is GJR GARCH model. GJR GARCH model. So here, instead of S-GARCH, we would be writing GJR GARCH. Okay. So, and we are using again with the normal distribution model would be normal, and then again we can change it to student T, skewed student T. Distribution model you can keep on changing, but here the main model I am changing, which is the variance model. Okay, now I'm using asymmetric GARCH model. So I'm just rerunning all the things. Okay, these are my results. Now you can see there is a gamma. Hope you remember yesterday equation where we had the gamma parameter, and then we says if gamma is equals to 0, that means it's a symmetric gauge. If gamma is non-zero, it is asymmetric gauge. But if gamma is positive, it says there is a leverage effect. I hope you remember yesterday's lecture. So today when we see in the results, we find my gamma is positive and significant. Okay, rest of the things I'm not reading again, because I hope you understood what is alpha, beta, omega, mu. Only gamma I'm reading. In the variance equation, we have a gamma, and it coefficient says that it is positive and significant. That says that we have the leverage effect. That means the bad news impact the market more sharply than the good news. Okay, or you can say the market react with the bad news in a much coherent way than the positive news. So when we see the plot, now you can see the plot and the difference. See, there is a plot. Can you see the plot? Hello, can you see the plot?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I hope the audience is not sleeping because I can't see you guys.
Aarti, we cannot see the plot because the screen is still in on.
Is it
No,
not
we can see,
visible?
sir. We can see, sir.
Okay.
It's visible, ma'am.
Okay, fine. If it is visible, that is well and good. So since I'm using GJR model with the normal distribution plot, again the normal distribution is not the best fitted, that we know, but as a standard we start with the normal distribution, and then we start implementing, or we start improving the model further. So you can see the QQ plot here. My residuals plot says that they are not normally behaving because they are going apart. Observations are not falling on the line, on the mean line. They are falling apart. And then look at the news impact curve. Okay, look at the news impact curve. So here we have the epsilon t minus 1, and there you have the gamma. Okay, so you can see the negative. When you look at the left hand side, you have the negative values, and when you look at the positive right hand side, we have the positive value. So since we have the leverage effect, our gamma is positive. It says that the bad news hampers the market more sharply than the good news. There is a leverage effect in the market. Can you see that? Okay. So this is the beauty of Garch model. Again, rest of the things are same. I'm skipping it, like how to extract the coefficients and other things. Let me go to something new. So this is my model fifth, which says DGR Garch model with the student T distribution. So I have asymmetric Garch model. I'm using a skewed student T distribution, and let me see how the results come.
Hello, ma'am.
Yes.
Ma'am, can you please just again state the values of gammas about how it is a bad news is impacting more
Yeah,
with this?
I'll tell you. In this model only, I will tell you. This is my GGR student T distribution. Okay. So here you again got skewness and shape curve. Okay, parameters, right? And then you have the gamma. Okay. You can see, look at the gamma value. It is 0.168801. Okay. So this is positive. If you remember the yesterday's talk, we said if the gamma is equals to 0, that makes the model symmetric. That means there is no impact of the news in the market. But if the gamma is greater than 0, it says there is a asymmetric effect of the news in the market, and our model is asymmetric Garch model. But in this particular case, when the gamma is non-zero, there is a particular case where the gamma is positive, greater than 0. So when the gamma is greater than 0, we say there is a leverage effect. Okay, leverage effect means the bad news hampers the market more sharply than the good news. That means when the bad news arises, stock prices fall so sharply, and the volatility at that time period in the market in the stock prices would be very high as comparison to when the good news arise to the market. Am I clear to you?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Okay, so fine. When I run the GGR Garch model, let's see how the model has improved. Okay, so now you can see we have a shape and skewness parameter, but I'm more interested to look into the graph because I know the statistics now you can compare. I wanted to make you the I want you to make you visualize the difference. So now when I'm using GJR skewed student T distribution, you can look at the QQ plot. Now this is coming to the normal shape. Okay, the observations are not falling apart. There are outliers, but they are not falling apart. They are more or less they are lying over the line, black line, as well as you can again see the impact curve, which says there is a leverage effect because my negative which says because my gamma is positive, my negative side of the curve falling so sharply. That means the volatility in the market is so sharp at the time when the bad news hit to the market, then the market is rising. You can see when the volatility is rising, it's very in a gradual manner as comparison to when it is falling, when the market is falling. The volatility in the falling market is much higher as comparison to the rising market. I hope I have made it clear to all of you, right? And then rest of the things are same. Now, one interesting thing which I would like to tell you, how to simulate the returns, let's say for 2021 period, because that is the last thing which I wanted to tell you. So how to simulate the returns for or the price series for, let's say, 1 year ahead? Because ultimately the goal of the using GARCH and GARCH model to first understand what is the heteroscedasticity. If it is present, then how to tap this information and to predict the future prices. Okay, so what I would be uh, so after running the number of models, what I understand, my GGR GARCH model with skewed student T distribution is better fit, and then this model I'm going to use further for predicting the or simulating the future prices or of the any of the time series. Let's say for Apple. Okay, in this case we are using Apple. So what I'm going to use, I would be using the UGARCH path, and it will be simulating, I would be simulating 3 time series, and for 1 year ahead, for 1 year period. So I would be taking 252 days, I would be counting 252 days. So this is my part. So I'm just storing all the results here, coefficients and other thing, and I'm simulating the series. This is my simulation, I've run the simulation. Now this is my series 1, this is my series 2, or let me just combinedly run. This is my 3 series, you can see. These are my 3 series simulated. Yeah. So this is my 3 simulated series 1, 2 and 3 based upon the coefficients which I've extracted from the GARCH model. Let me plot and then you can understand. So you can see it here. This is the return series, okay? This is the fitted observations of the return series. So I have simulated 3 time series 1, 2, 3 with the different weighted which I've assigned to the volatility. So I've simulated three series of the returns. I can also plot the volatility, and you can see the volatility curve of the simulated series. So this is my volatility curve. So now the big question comes, which one should we adopt and which one should we abort? Okay, so after looking at the series, what I found, the series number number 1 series, this is much smoother as comparison to the other 2 series. Okay, so I would be taking this simulation series and I can discard the other 2. It is very subjective. It again depends upon your analysis, which series you wanted to have it. I cannot comment that which one you should have. It's again your intelligence, and again depends upon your objective, future objectives, or the way you are, I mean, the in the context where you are working, you can take any of these series. But in my understanding, I should take first series because that is much smoother. This has smoothened the volatility as comparison to the other series. Okay, so this is my understanding. Okay, and then I can also simulate the share prices of the Apple. So what I would be doing, I will be taking the tail of the Apple, 2020, because my data
Ma'am, hello. Ma'am, your voice is not audible now.
I
Yeah,
guess the
it's not
voice
audible.
coming.
Arti, your voice is not audible right now. OC. Recording OC. Not at.
I did not realize.
Start right.
Ma'am, you were presenting the 3 series basically.
Hello.
Hello, madam, can you hear me?
Ha. So I was presenting the 3 series, right?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Then you
Okay.
were
So
suggesting that series 1
yeah,
should be selected based on your the volatility is
understanding.
smooth.
Yeah. So only the last part was the price. I want so base data. So in the last observation, I have 2020, which is closing price is 133.72. Based upon that, I would be re-simulating the prices again. Okay, so these are the formula for the re-simulation. So let me graph. So this is my graph. Price. Earlier, I was simulating for the return and volatility. This is for the price. Okay, so you can see more or less and the reason why I'm choosing the series first, looking at the price, I can say that my price fluctuations are less. Okay, as very much obvious that I told you before, the volatility is quite smooth for the series one. My price fluctuation is quite smoother as comparison to the other two series. Okay, so that is the reason that I wanted to prefer the series one over the other two. You can also see the mat plot, which where all the series will be together plotted. So you can see my, the red line, the red curve, it is much smoother as comparison to the other two. Okay. So this is all I have to submit, and I hope you all have got some understanding about the GARCH model and given the lectures today and yesterday. And this is what I wanted to submit, and I can share you the code today. And I want you to do the exercise with the NSE stock or whatever stock you wanted to take, not NSE only, any stock you wanted to take, and just do a comparison. So your exercise would be download any of your interest stock, or let's say NSE or BSC, and do the analysis. You run all these 5 models and do a comparative analysis, which one is best and which one is good fit, and what is the reason, why do you think this one is a good fit and why not. So over to Biju. I think I've already finished up the presentation on time.
Yeah, sure.
Can I have
If
some
anybody have questions,
if
we can ask questions.
Yeah, Professor Aarti, I have one request. So,
Yes, sir.
yeah, so basically, since we were presenting about GARCH and all, and we were able to understand it in a better way, but can I assume that this was primarily a case of a univariate GARCH, and normally if we're
This
dealing with multivariate series, then in that case, if you can give us some material or something through which we can learn, that will be a great help.
This is the univariate GARCH. Definitely the multivariate GARCH or like dynamic conditional correlation, we have to go to that part. So that is the reason we were planning to have a workshop somewhere in December where I can come up with the univariate, then we can extend it to the multivariate GARCH. Giving the material is not a problem, because see, it's the open source, and you can have the material even available online, but understanding part is very much important. So if you all insist and if you are interested, we can conduct a workshop somewhere in due course for the multivariate analysis, also multivariate GARCH.
Certainly, we'll be looking forward. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Hello.
Yes.
Aarti ma'am, I have few questions. Whatever you have taught, that was very useful for us. I was working on this model from very long, but I
Yeah.
have few questions related to that. First one is that when we make a mean equation, after fitting a GARCH, we need to have a mean equation.
Yes.
So usually they take ARIMA model or ARMA or maybe AR model, or maybe they take a lag1 model. So can you tell us some technique by which we can select the mean equation? After checking, yes, we check the residuals and everything, but any criteria by which we can select the
So
proper mean equation?
residuals will come only once you run the model. It cannot come before. If I don't have the model, I won't be having the residuals, first of all. So running AR1 model, let's say AR1 GARCH model or ARIMA GARCH model, you can run it. That's not a problem. But the point is, AR is basically what? Auto-regressive time series. If you find there is a serial correlation in the observation, you can always go for the AR1 model in any of the GARCH model. If you wanted to use, let's say, symmetric or asymmetric GARCH model, that you can further keep on improving. Okay, so you can start with the mean equation with the AR term, but again the
Okay.
process would be same. You have to keep building up the good model.
Okay,
right?
ma'am. I read somewhere in the books and in the previous papers, what they
Hmm.
do is first they need to they guided us like this. First we need to make a mean equation. Then
Hmm.
we need to check the residuals, and if there is the presence of arch effect is there, or maybe we need to check the autocorrelation and correlation. Then if that everything is satisfied, then only we can go for the arch modeling. Else we need to change our mean equation.
Yes,
So
yes, correct. That's correct. That's correct. They are saying very correctly that that is what I told you. You can, if you have to check the autocorrelation, right? If there is an autocorrelation or arch effect present, what is the arch effect? Arch effect is nothing but that your error term is having, they are, having a lag effect. There is the impact of the past error term, right? That is the
yes,
arch
yes.
model. You don't have the volatility equation in there. I mean, there is a volatility equation, but the volatility equation does not depend upon the past value of the volatility. It depends upon only the arch term, right? Which is epsilon square t minus 1. So if
Okay.
you have the arch effect present, which is the arch LM test, you can do it. So if
Mhm.
there is a present of arch effect, you can go for the Garch model because that is much better way of predicting the volatility.
All
Okay,
right.
so actually this workshop is only a small, introduction about
Yes,
Garch
yes, yes.
model. So
Actually, I thought like you are the expert into this field, so it's better to ask from you only. Whatever knowledge we have gathered or I have gathered is from reading papers and from you watching, attending some workshops. And I have another question. If I want to compare the volatility, let's say pre-pandemic and post-pandemic, or maybe you can say, like I did a work paper on introduction of derivatives in the
hmm,
currency market or post derivative. So I studies two kind of paper. First one is saying that you need to check the alpha plus beta
hmm.
of
This should be less than 1. That should be
Yes,
less than 1,
yes,
right?
it should
Yeah.
be less than one. But if let's say the alpha plus beta is 0.98 pre-pandemic and it is 0.97 post-pandemic, so
Okay.
it's a better way to compare the volatility that it has reduced or it has increased after that particular event, or we should go for that dummy variable like we can give the values pre-pandemic 0 and post-pandemic 0, because I have read in few papers that they have taken a dummy variable where
Hmm.
the values from previous duration has given 0, and they are checking the value that if it is positive or negative maybe, or it is significant or not, then accordingly they are deciding that the volatility has increased or decreased after
Hmm.
that period, or has whatever. So which is the right method for checking if we are comparing two time periods to check the
Actually,
volatility?
see, alpha and beta is only for to check whether the model should not explode. So alpha plus beta should be always less than 1 if your model is should be consistent, for the model to be consistent, right? If your alpha plus beta coefficient basically in the model parameters, if it goes beyond the 1, your variance will explode. Your variance equation will explode, and that we don't want it. So that means that model does not even, fit to the context. So that is the reason for the stability of the model, we need alpha plus beta should be less than 1. But as you said, pre-pandemic and post-pandemic, if both the time your alpha plus beta is less than 1, definitely the model is sustaining. But then to check which model, like what was your question? To check whether the volatility has rised post-pandemic or
Yes,
not.
yes,
That
yes, yes, ma'am.
Okay, so whether the volatility has gone up or not, that you can check with the beta coefficient itself. You can see that post-pandemic what was the volatility coefficient and how much it was, and pre-pandemic how much it was, how much it is, and then you can also see the news impact, because pandemic is what, it's a kind of news or shock to the market, right? So after giving shock to the market, what is the impact on the volatility that you can then you can compare pre and post. This is
Right.
what I can tell you, because right now I'm just, whatever you are telling, I'm just assuming it and analyzing it. So this is
Yes,
how
yes.
you can tell. I cannot give you a correct answer right now. Maybe it's
It's okay.
difficult
It's
to give
okay.
you. But what I can understand is if your alpha plus beta both are less than 1 for pre and post pandemic, that means your model is sustaining. Your model is consistent. Model does not have a problem. But now you wanted to compare with the volatility whether it has gone up or not. So that there are a number of ways. So first thing is you can look at the news impact curve. Again, which model you are using, it's up to you. So you can see the news impact model. And post pandemic, basically post pandemic you have to use the GGR Garch model or asymmetric Garch model, right? Because that will capture the post pandemic. And then you look at the gamma. Okay, so if the gamma value is rising, okay, it is positive and rising, that says automatically there is the impact of the news or the shock in the market. You can compare the gamma values also.
All right, all right. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
So that also you can do. You can see like how much there is impact based upon the coefficient values. And then overall volatility curve also you can, plot side by side and you can compare by visualizing, okay, that whether the volatility has gone up for a particular stock or the particular stock market or not.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, any other questions or
any other questions?
Madam.
Yes.
Hello. Madam, how to detect how to get the news effect actually?
I told you the gamma. No,
How will you be deciding whether to use the G-Garch model or general U-Garch model?
See, I think that answer itself in the previous question. See, when you are doing some kind of event study, there is, let's say, some IPO came into the market and you wanted to see the impact on the stock prices of that particular stock. Let's say Apple has released the IPO and you wanted to see that after the introduction of IPO, I think the person has already given some answer for that, that he wanted to look, he was doing some work with the derivative market, so he wanted to see that after the introduction of the derivatives, what is the volatility in the market. Okay, so when you already have the objective that you wanted to see or analyze the data or analyze, market or stock after introduction of something, so it's already there in your objective, that it says that you wanted to see the impact of a particular event or particular shock. So their asymmetric model comes into the mind. Now, where the point you are using asymmetric model and you wanted to check that how far this impact has been accumulated in the stock prices, or let's say in the market. Let's say after the introduction of the derivative market, how far the volatility has gone up, or whether it has a positive impact or the negative impact in the market altogether. So that is how you can, check the news impact. I hope I answer your question.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so that itself comes in your objective. So when you decide your objective, what you wanted to analyze, that answer itself in your question. Okay, so what model you wanted to use, that itself in your objective. That if you wanted to see the pandemic effect, definitely there would be some shock to the market, right? So at that time you are going to use asymmetric Garch model. Or let's say global financial crisis effect you wanted to see. Or let's say the Asian crisis of 2015, let's say Chinese stock market crash you wanted to see. So my objective is very clear and my answer is also inside the objective. Now, the only implementation part will tell me that which model would be best fitted among the asymmetric Garch models. Are you getting my point?
Yes, ma'am.
Like we have exponential, GGR and the other Garch model. So which model would be best fitted, and then you can make the comparison, and you can also say pre and post pandemic, pre and post crisis, pre and post IPO introduction, pre and post let's say derivative market introduction, and pre and post many things, right?
In case of the ARIMA model, we are considering the AR as well as the moving average, that means the MA, that means the error volatility.
Yes.
Ma'am, then how it is going to different with these models actually?
ARIMA model is a different, and Arch and Garch model basically deals with the volatility part. Okay, ARIMA model we introduce in the mean equation, not in the variance equation. First, remember we have a 3 categorization in the Garch when we specify mean equation, variance equation, and distribution model. That's not an equation, but distribution model part, right? So basically, when we introduce ARIMA term, so that terms comes in your mean equation. Okay, so mean equation is nothing about the return. You are, modeling the return equation. You are modeling the returns, and there you wanted to see the autoregressive, like your returns, whether they are depending upon the past returns or not, whether they are depending upon any kind of idiosyncratic news or not. So that is the mean equation part. Are you getting my point?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Any other question, or shall we wind up?
So we had a wonderful session by Aarti Omar. I would like to invite Dr. Prashant Sharma, Associate Professor, Institute of Health Management, Research, Jaipur, to propose vote of thanks, formal vote of thanks to this person, Aarti Omar.
Thank you, Professor Viju, for giving me this opportunity to propose the formal vote of thanks. So on behalf of all the participants, I would like to extend heartiest thanks to Professor Aarti Omar for conducting such a wonderful session on volatility modeling, and precisely she covered Arch and Gauge models. And the good thing is that whatever concepts she was explaining theoretically, she were able to connect each and everything along with the practical examples, and she was kind enough to share all those codes and other things with us for our practice. So thank you so much, Professor Aarti, and we were actually able to learn a lot out of these sessions, and our basic concepts are already clear. And as you mentioned that you are planning some workshop in December, certainly we all are looking forward to that, and as and when we will be receiving information, we would like to enroll for that. So thank you so much on the behalf of all the participants. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Biju. Thank you, Professor Prashant. And I'm really delighted to, conduct this. Delivered a lecture to this workshop, having my busy schedule with my small, tender baby. She's crying right now, so I should better rush. And
Biju,
thank you so much. Yeah, thank you so much.
Biju sir,
Yes.
Sir, we have a request that please do a workshop with Aarti ma'am, because nicely explain the concept. I think we are looking forward for more session from
WhatsApp group. I think so.
Yeah,
Aarti is in the
I'm there in
WhatsApp
the
group.
WhatsApp. Yeah, I'm there in the WhatsApp group. Yes.
Oh, ma'am, it's wonderful, nicely explain the concept, and it's really things are very clear and precise. So
Thank you
we are
so
very
much.
thankful.
I'm really delighted, and definitely as a scholar,
I would like to inform you that we will conduct next coming workshop with Aarti Omar. December time she already announced, and we will try
Yes.
for that with the permission of our university. She can
Yeah,
also
yeah,
join
and
for that.
at that time you can also get a chance to listen. My husband, he's also PhD scholar from IFMR, and now it is converted to Kriya University, and he's a senior consultant in ENY, Ernest Young, and right now he's boarded in Goldman Sachs. He's also quant finance student. So we both would like to conduct, and we both can share our experience, and some more practical session we can take up. So right now we are yet to decide the timings and all. So we'll convey you as early as possible from our side. Okay. And thank you so much again to all of you for for your patience and listening me very peacefully, and trying to asking a lot of questions that also helped me to understand the things. So thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Aarti, for
Okay.
such taking wonderful effort, I would say.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay. I'm
Okay,
leaving
thank
the
you.
meeting, Biju. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Bye.
Nice. Stop recording. And we will meet again 2 o'clock with Dr. Da's session.
Biju sir, no feedback, feedback session for this.
Feedback form already shared. It will be shared in the WhatsApp group also. Don't worry.
Okay.
Yeah. In the
Okay.
chat box we have shared. It will be available in the WhatsApp group also.
Okay.
We do that. We will sometimes we will end the meeting and we will be restart at 1:30, and the 2 o'clock sharp the session will be started. You can join from 1:30 onwards. The meeting sometimes may be ended right now.